Hello, my sweet friends. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am sharing how I took some scrap wood and painted them up to look like some country primitive rustic pumpkins, as well as show you how I put all of the little bows together. I'm also going to share how I painted this little welcome to our patch sign. So if you like country crafts like this, let's go ahead and get started, and I will share what I did. Okay, the other day my husband was cleaning out his shop. He had these 2x4s and 2x6s, and he was like, "Hey, can you do anything with these?" And I'm like, "Yeah, don't you be throwing them out." Anyway, so I went to Pinterest, looking around to see some scrap wood ideas. I ran across this pin, and I will have it linked below for my inspiration. I am an advocate for community over competition, to kind of let you know where I got my inspiration. And so I gave each of the blocks 2 coats of this Waverly pumpkin chalk paint and let that dry. Then I took my coarse sandpaper. I have a 60 grit sandpaper that I'm just going to tear off a piece and just rough up the edges, kind of exposing a little bit of the wood. This is just a personal preference. This is how I like to distress my projects, especially my wood projects. Now, I do have a hand palm sander, but it was late at night when I was doing this, and I didn't want to have to go outside because of all of the sawdust and that kind of thing. I also use a tack cloth. It is linked in my Amazon store for using, to get all of the little dust particles off my little wood projects like this. You can also use a baby wipe. Is something to, clean off your project so that you can move on to the next step. To add a little bit more distressing to my pumpkins, I'm just using this antique wax by Waverly, and just taking a stiff stencil brush, I'm just brushing it on the pumpkins. What I usually do is I dip my brush in the paint, and then I wipe it off on a paper towel, and then I go over my project so that I don't get too much on there. And then I just put that to the side to dry. So then here I'm showing you the pumpkins that have the distressing antique wax on there, and then these do not. So I guess it's just a personal preference of what look you're going for. Yesterday, I shared a sneak peek of these rustic pumpkins over on my Instagram, as well as in my Facebook group and on my community tab of my YouTube. And so many people thought I was doing gingerbread, but I'm not quite ready to do Christmas yet. So I love my puffy paint, and I do a lot of projects with that. And so I'm just going to be giving these pumpkins some doodles. I just made some squiggles, and then, let that completely dry so that I could work on them. But I do promise that I will be doing some gingerbread this year, 2019, so y'all stay tuned for that. Then I am taking my fine point Sharpie marker and just giving some doodles around. Now, this is my personal preference. This is something I like to do. I love doodling. I love using my black Sharpie marker on my projects. And maybe if I would have done this part yesterday before I did my sneak peek, people would have known that I was doing pumpkins. Anyway, so I just go around and just kind of give it just some little marks that it looks like a pumpkin. I added some black splatters on my pumpkins first by just using a stiff paintbrush and splattering it on the pumpkins. Next, I added the white. I always do the black first, then I do the white. And I just love the way that this looks on my pumpkins. It looks very primitive country to me, and it is a personal preference. But, if you want to make pumpkins and you don't like the splatters, you don't have to do this part, but I really like the way that it makes my projects look. For the stems of my pumpkins, I have these few wine corks that I have been holding on, waiting for the perfect project. And then also I have some unfinished wooden spools that I just purchased at Hobby Lobby, I think. They're in the unfinished wood section. But you can also look at, garage sales, Goodwill, thrift shops, any place like that to find some of these treasures. I just painted them brown, and then now just using my hot glue, just gluing it in the center of the top of the pumpkin to make the stem. Now for the fun part, at least for me, I am going to show you how I made the tops of the little pumpkins using all my country primitive fun stuff. So what I'm using here is I have some homespun fabric. Homespun is just fabric you can see on both sides, and also some muslin. I'm using this burlap from the Dollar Tree. I have some pip berries. I also am using some of these paper wire stems. I get questions about these all the time. I will have a link in the description below where you can get them on Amazon, or I got mine from Walmart. So if you're lucky enough to find those, that's where I got mine. So I'm also using some raffia too. Anyway, so what I'm doing is I'm cutting about a 1-inch strip of each of those fabric, and I just tear it down the middle, rip it. It gives the ragged edges, which I like. And then I cut that burlap in half because it's a little too wide. And so for my little stems, I just took my wires and I just curled it around the a dowel, and then I hot glued that wire on first because I want that to be secured with the fabric, ribbon, and all the other fun stuff. And this is how all of these cute little pumpkins look bunched here together. I just love the additions of all the pip berries, that just makes my heart just happy, happy, happy. And just the burlap and the muslin and the paper wire, and just all the doodles, and it just looks so primitive country to me. Now, this is just my style, my version of how I do things, but you can take it and make it your own. Okay, so now we're going to paint up this cute little welcome to our patch sign. So let's get started on painting the sign. For the sign, I'm using one of these thankful little signs from Dollar Tree, and my white Waverly chalk paint. I just paint the top of the sign with 3 coats of the Waverly chalk paint. Then now I'm using my antique white color Americana paint and my fan brush. I will have a link to the brushes that I like to use for my painting projects linked below in the description. I just take a part of the brush and I just make some little stripes on my sign because I just like the look that it gives. Just using some black paint and my number 2 flat paintbrush, I'm going to hand letter here, paint with the paintbrush. Now, it has taken me many years to learn how to paint with the paintbrush. I say that humbly, but I owe all of the glory to God because He has allowed me to do all of this crafting stuff and just pursue the desires of my heart because I totally love all of this painting stuff. And so without him, I would not be able to do this. So all the glory to him. Anyway, so I am just painting up here. Welcome to our patch. And I just like to add just little dots on the end. And I use the end of a paintbrush to do that. It's like, I have so many, my paintbrushes are so worn and so loved because I have used them so many years. And I just figure out what size I want and what size works for me. If something like this, if I mess up, I just paint over it and then start over. I know it takes extra time, but I have had many trial and error projects over the years that I'm like, oh my goodness, I do not like the way that that looks. And I just start over. So anyway, paint is really good for that. Now I'm going to do some shading around the edges. I should have done this before I started my welcome to the patch, but I got a little ahead of myself. But I just dip part of my brush into paint and then the other part in water, and then shade along the edges of my project. Then now I'm just taking my fine Sharpie marker, just going around, just adding some doodles because that's what I like to do for my projects. And then I'm taking some black paint to splatter on the project. And then also I top that with some white splatters. Something that was going to be discarded just turned out so cute, and I love the way that these turned out. I hope you do too. On my main channel, I do have playlists of other hand-painted projects if you're interested in seeing that, as well as some other fall and autumn projects just on my main channel. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you all, your sweet comments, your support of my channel, and for my support of community over competition. Y'all all have a great day, and I will talk to you very soon, and God bless.